Jakob Ingebrigtsen is going to do in the 1500. He has time to look behind him. 20 years of age, and he is on top of the world.
But coming down for a maiden national crown, Cornwall is the champion.
Algarouge has run his race, or has he? Has he got anything left? Algarouge trying to get there. Kipchoge, the junior's there. Algarouge is trying to get to the line. Kenya wins it. Kipchoge takes
Vivian Chariot's turn, and what a proud moment for her and the Kenyans. The first woman from her nation to take the 5,000 metre title. Vivian Chariot's in Dreamland.
on the outside. Ollie Hall of Australia comes. Jake Whiteman has just spent. It's going to be Chariot and Hall. Who's going to get it? It's going to be Australia. The gold.
Luke Mathews is best known for his bronze medal at the 2018 Commonwealth Games 800 metres. But, as many of you will know, there was a period there around 2018 to 2020 when Luke was close to unbeatable on the domestic scene. But during the COVID year, Luke started battling injury and hasn't made it back to his best. We caught up with Luke and dived deep into his career, including his training and races, his time at Melbourne Track Club, his intense battle with injury, and heaps more. Just quickly, before we jump into this episode is powered by a brand close to my heart, Tarkine. Tarkine is a rapidly growing Australian company that makes high-tech running apparel and shoes in an ethical and sustainable way. Our recently released Trail Devil shoe got voted by Believe in the Run website as one of the biggest surprises of 2023 and has found its way onto the feet of some of Australia's best runners. Tarkine is run by Australians in Australia, and all product is shipped from Perth, Western Australia. Check them out at tarkine.com and use code RUNNERSTRIVE for 10% off your order. Luke, awesome to have you on the podcast, man. Where are you at? Where are you at the moment?
Thanks for having me on, mate. Yeah, I am currently at home in my bedroom, working from home today. So didn't want to annoy the boys too much with however long this goes for. So yeah, just moved from my study to my bed. So at home in Williamstown in Melbourne.
Nice, man. I mean, COVID had its perks, hey? It's kind of like, that's okay these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because like now if you go in the office like 4 days a week, you're like, oh wow, like that's commitment type thing. I probably averaged last year maybe like 3 days a week. Even sometimes there'd be times where I'd just go in for like 2 days or 1 day or something like that. So I couldn't imagine what work would have been like pre-COVID because even though I'm not too far from work, it's such a big process to like get to work and then get home from work with just, walking a train and walk, and then you have to work backwards with showering. You have to worry about trying to clean and iron your work clothes and that. So it's yeah, it honestly I couldn't imagine what work would have been like before COVID. So
I definitely have a few friends in like the public sector who definitely take the piss, like just chill out at home a lot, send the odd email to make it look like they're working. But I assume in the private world, people are going to figure that out pretty quick, hey?
wow, yeah, but also at the same time, there's definitely ways you can work around that. Like even today, like I had to do some stuff, and yeah, just went and did it. So hopefully my boss isn't listening, but yeah, I think the thing about this working from home and what COVID taught is that you can be flexible. You don't have to necessarily live in like the rigid time frame of like 9 to 5 or whatever it might be. So I think it's definitely shown that you can be flexible, and yeah, it can work. That maybe I think like there's people that I know. I work with a lady who is a mother of how old? I think the kid's like 3 or 4 or something like that. But she usually logs off at like 4 p.m. and then comes back on at like 7 p.m. or something like that. So pretty common now with kids and yeah, people with kids and I suppose a life away from work. But yeah, it's it's good. But we'll stop talking about working.
Mate, the reason for getting you on is I was on a run a few weeks back with, I know some young kids on the run, some juniors, and kind of your name came up, and then no one really, we're in WA, right? For those that listening, and no one really on the run had any clue like what the hell had happened to Luke Mathews. I think everyone was just like, oh, he probably got injured and disappeared. So I was like, shit, I'm just going to reach out, get you on. I understand most people in Victoria and stuff probably know, and your mates and that. But what is happening, man? You just to a lot of the running world, it seems like you just kind of disappeared. But what is the actual story?
Well, I mean, yeah, I suppose it could be like that. But yeah, at the same time, it's nice to know that I've still got some relevance to be brought up on a run. So I like that. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, because my mum is a coach of a lot of juniors. She also coaches Morgan Mitchell, at I suppose at like an elite level, coached her to the 2021 Olympics. She gets bombarded all the time. Like, what's Luke doing? Is he making a comeback? Is he running? Is he retired? Is he what? But yeah, I think well, for me, like, first and foremost, like, I'm working like professionally now. So I work in the corporate finance space at Ernst & Young, or EY. So pretty much what I do is I work in valuation. So I pretty much value companies, more or less. And yeah, so that's what I do day to day, Monday to Friday. Occasionally a Sunday if I don't do enough work on a Friday. Like right now, it's a Friday right now, so I might have to make up later on if I don't get stuff done. But yeah, like, that's pretty much me from a work perspective. I'm also playing local footy at the moment. Like literally, Western Region Football League. I played predominantly in the ones last year, played 2 games in the twos. But yeah, not at a high level. I don't have any dreams or desires to play at a high level. Not that I'm good enough anyway. The good thing about it is, and I actually used this against someone in a footy match once, was so I was playing a team and a guy that I kind of knew. I was just like, a bit of push and shove, whatever. And the bloke just looked at me and just goes, "Fucking hell, you're a fall from grace, aren't you?" Which is true, but he goes, "You're a fall from grace, aren't you?" And the spots would wear green and gold, and I said, "Hey, mate, I'm still wearing the green and gold, baby." And even he laughed. So the good thing is that even though I'm playing local footy in the Western Region Football League, I still get to wear the green and gold. So it's good.
What happened with the running? Like, did you get injured, or were you just over it?
Well, look, I'd say, look, without putting like a definite label on it, like, from where I'm at right now, it would be very, very hard to get back to, the level I once was. But also at the same time, just me being stubborn and ignorant and just whatever you want to call it, is I'd never say that I'm ever retired, because I reckon probably once a week I always have a thought where I'm like, fuck, should I just give it another crack or whatever? So I don't want to say I'm retired and then one day I actually go on that thought and say, fuck it, I'm going to go for a run and, try to get back into it. So yeah, firstly, I'm not retired, and I wouldn't say, even though I live a very retired life. So that's the first thing. And once again, just a flag, even if I was to come out of retirement or come back, it would be a very, very long and tough process to get back to where I was. So that's the first thing. But yeah, I think for me, if I kind of trace it back, it probably stems back to, I'd say around probably the start of 2020. I tore my plantar fascia, and I think it was like an 8mm tear in my plantar. So I think plantars these days, or always have been, they're pretty common to get, whether it's just plantar fasciitis or a tear or whatever it might be. So I was dealing with that kind of through the start of 2020. And I remember leading up to whenever COVID hit, like March, I was literally, I was cross training. I was trying to run reduced kilometers. I was just honestly, like, I was hobbling around the track. Like, I was running, and I would like go and get a massage, and my physio or masseuse would be like, "Your left calf is fucked. Like it's so tight, it's like a rock because of how I was running weirdly on my foot. So that happened, and then COVID hit, and I spoke to my physio, and he just said, like, look, like, to be honest with you, the best thing to do is just to try get this ready. So don't run, walk around in a moon boot where you can, and just try let it repair. So went into COVID. I definitely wasn't cross training as much as I should have. Definitely ate a lot more than I should have, drank a lot more than I should have, as I feel like everyone did. And then kind of tail end of 2020, we kind of got back to some normality, got back to a running program, got back to going okay, or just okay, I'd say. My threshold was probably around like 315s, 320s. I was moving. Sorry,
your 30-minute threshold, you mean?
Oh, I think I'd worked up to about 20 minutes or something
20,
like
yeah,
that. So I was
yeah.
like, I was on the way back, and then I remember I was probably in like my second month back, or at like a decent workload, and started to feel a bit of a pain in my Achilles. And then that was kind of one of those things where I was just managing. 2021 happens. I ended up racing the domestic season that. So I raced. What did I do? I think I raced 3 times. Around 148 in my first race, which was my first race from the 2019 World Champs, so like a year and a half prior. I ran 2 days later in Sydney, and I was absolutely fucked. It was my first ever DNF. I was so far off the pace, just so cooked, and I don't even really remember like pulling out, but I remember just doing it and thinking, one, why the fuck did I do that? But two, I was also like 30 meters off the pace. Ran in Brisbane a few weeks later, dead DFL, dead fucking last, ran like 152 or something. And then went to the Nationals that year, got knocked out in the semis. So it wasn't quite as good as my back-to-back national championship 800-meter run, sorry. And then, I think I remember after Nationals, I went away to Port Douglas for a week. And then the plan was to like go have a bit of a week break and then head over to Europe and then, try qualify. But then let's I got there, because my Achilles was still fucked, kind of made a bit of a decision with my mum, who was my coach at the time, to say, let's not go to Europe. Let's not chase it. Let's just, stay here. Stayed, ended up, tried to get my Achilles right. I was kind of umming and ahhing with surgery, what I should do, whether I should because I had a Haglund. So what essentially ended up happening was my Achilles had a small tear in it, like a very, very like micro tear, which I'm assuming if you did an MRI on a lot of the runners now that have very similar thing.
Yeah.
But the thing that made it weird was I had a Haglund's, which is essentially like a bone, it's like a bone spur that was digging right into that tear. So it was just fucking torturous. Like I was running and just, but then 2021 was probably more like a harsher lockdown than 2020. Once again, was trying to cross train, trying to get back to some regular programming. Wasn't great. I remember the Achilles just stayed around for ages. I ended up getting surgery on it in February 22, and then got back from surgery. And then in April that year, I started working full time, which is where I'm at now. And then, when I started working, I just never really got back into it. I just stopped cross training, and I just thought, no, I just don't really want to, just didn't really have any motivation to train.
Yeah.
What was, cross training 1-2 times a day to essentially doing nothing. I started living a very normal life of, working and, after Thursday night drinks, Friday night drinks, just, and then just also just, living, what a normal corporate life would be. That's pretty much been the same since. So 2022, I mean, I was pretty untidy, got pretty fat, it wasn't great. And then as we started like footy pre-season and that, and then I started to get into a bit more of a regular routine with gym and all that stuff. So kind of a long story, but pretty much once I got surgery, never really came back from it, and just
Bloody bloody Achilles, man. Like how common is just Achilles issues, hey, in runners, middle distance runners, and any runner really, but I guess track runners more than road runners, right? Like it's just
Yeah,
so
and
many people's careers.
yeah, for sure. Like if I think about the two I had, Planner and Achilles, like I don't really know anyone that wouldn't have had some form of like discomfort in either of those, or had a tear, or had some form of damage to the area. So yeah, it's fucked. And I think I'm once again, this is just because I was reading everything I could about it. Like I'm pretty sure that plantar fascia, plantar fasciitis and plantar issues can then relate to the Achilles. So I think they're like linked. I don't really know the anatomy of the body and all that stuff, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're linked in some way.
Yeah, yeah. I know Jai Edwards has been battling with Achilles, and it's just, Jen Gregson, sorry, had obviously tore her Achilles. It's just everyone is it's just part of life as a middle distance runner. Hey, it just sucks. But
Oh
so,
yeah, it's not great, but yeah, just part of the job.
and how hard is it once you get a full-time job, like to go back to doing what you were doing with a mileage kind of Peter Snell type shit, right? Um, you know, and it's hard, right? You'd have to probably go to part-time, take a huge pay cut, maybe your career wouldn't advance. It would be a big call.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be very tough. When I joined, which the recruitment and like all the interview processes probably started like January, February that year. Um, at that time, I had told them that I wanted to, balance my running, and my boss said she'd be pretty flexible in trying to cater for that because when I started, a bloke had just left who had played for I think the Redbacks in state cricket. And yeah, there was times where he would maybe it was like twice a week, like he'd leave at like 2 o'clock or something like that. So I think it was doable, especially at a place like the Big Four, which is the Big Four accounting firm. Sorry, um, I think it could be done, especially now with all this work from home. Um, but at the same time, I always think like it's not always, but like I have this thought every now and then where I'm just like on the train home or on the train to work, where I'm thinking, fuck, like imagine going down to the track at like 6 a.m. doing 8 by K, or finishing work at like 5 o'clock and trying to do a threshold or something like that. So yeah, it'd be very tough. So I'm not saying it's not possible because there's definitely a lot of runners out there that do it. Like Lisa Waitman, for example, like I'm pretty sure she's pretty high up at NAB or something like that. Um, it can be done, and I take my hats off to the people that do that because if I was trying to run, let's just say 140, 150 Ks like I used to, and also work in a full-time job, one, I'd have no life, and two, I don't even know if mentally I could do it.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty rough, hey. Man, I just wanted to jump into your career a little bit, like, and just kind of jump all over the place. But this morning I was listening to a little chat you had with some AFL website. I don't know what AFL thing it was.
Oh, the Bombers one that I did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. And you said in there that post Olympics when you got run out in the heats that you got abused. Like people were sending you private messages telling you were shit. Like, did that legit happen? Hey, like that wasn't just like I listened to that and was like, come on, like did that like you legit got abused?
Oh, I mean, maybe abuse isn't like the right word to use because that I don't know, but like yeah, I mean, I definitely if I used abuse, I probably yeah, that's probably correct. But yeah, like I mean, I was definitely getting messages and stuff like that from people saying I was shit from just like why
What
the
the
fuck would they
fuck?
send you? Why you're wasting our time? I gotta go. It wasn't like bombarded, but definitely got a handful that just like I remember seeing, and it's like I remember even reading stuff about like yeah, like I think I got a message once about taxpayer dollars, like, oh, you're wasting my money or something like that. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm 21. Like, I don't get to decide who funds this trip. So yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'm not saying that I'm and mind you, I probably don't even get it. I probably didn't get it to the extent of what other people got it as well. I'm just saying, just talking about my experience. But yeah, definitely not incorrect. And even little things like just like reading articles and stuff like that, just talking about how you got ran out and you fucking clogging up space in the track and stuff. It's not great. Yeah, especially when I'm always one that's put a fair amount of expectation on myself, as all athletes do. So you're dealing with your own inner failure, and then you cop it from media, randoms with a fake profile and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all that stuff. It's not great, but I think like all sports people get that. Like I've got a couple of mates that play in the AFL, and they'll show me their messages request every now and then, and it's just them getting hounded because they fucked up a multi or they fucked up a hand, like they they didn't hit a certain amount of touches in their multi or something like that. So it's very common, and yeah, like I said, my experience is probably nowhere near what other people have copped. But at the same time, like, yeah, it happens, and yeah.
Mate, it makes me think about poor Peter Bowl, man. Like how the shit he must have copped. It makes me kind of, I don't know, it makes me angry.
And yeah, I mean, we could talk about that whole thing for an hour on a podcast, but I think like just touching on that briefly, like what a fucking balls up that was. Like poor Peter, like the way that it happens, like it's. I was always once again, I didn't really know like how the testing and all that could be dodgy. Like I didn't really, not dodgy, like how you could have like the fake positives and that stuff. But that whole thing, like the fact that he was ended up, well, I was always on the side that he was a clean athlete because I, know him well and know Justin and the system. Two, to then actually be proven that he was innocent. And then three, like the damage that like irrecoverable damage that has that's been impacted his name and the mental damage that it would have done as well. Like hats off to him that he was able to come out of that and still be able to run at the world champs and run a 144 or I think around 144, run 144 and run in Europe and all that. So just an absolute balls up. But like I said, we'll try not to get bogged down on that because we can talk about
I just know that like he must have just copped so much. Like Runners Tribe even copped some shit. Like when the news was breaking, we published this thing about all we did was publish the AA media release, right? And we just stayed on the fence. We didn't publish any opinion. We just stated, and then we got abused by people that thought he was dirty, that we should have called him out and written an article about how he's dirty and he should piss off, And I was just, we had about 10 people just ripping into us. I'm like, mate, like just chill out. Just wait for the B sample and let's just like give him some breathing space. Like it was just, I remember thinking at the time that if we're getting abused, some website that most people don't give a shit about, why, he must just be getting absolutely, spanked. Do you know what I mean? Which is poor dude.
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm not relating drugs in any way to Peter Bowl, right? But talking quickly about drugs in sport, like I remember in the 90s and like even, there was a guy that won the Olympics in 2000 who everyone always chatted about behind his back. Yeah, he's on drugs. Like during your time on the circuit, did that happen much? Were there guys you were running against who you were all just kind of chatting about how he's probably juiced? Or was it something that you just really didn't know?
I mean, like, yeah, like once I think for me, like that whole drugs in sport, it's just something that, it's just relevant in, athletics, in cycling, in swimming, like anything that's, I mean, any sport, but specifically like aerobic events, like there's always going to be an element of that in any sport. So yeah, like we were like when we're in training groups and stuff, like, yeah, we definitely talk about it. I wouldn't say, I mean, there's probably times where maybe we were hypothesizing maybe, but like at the same time, like if you just look on facts, like there was people that I raced against who had been charged and had returned. And there was also athletes who got done after I'd raced them. So like people that have been done now. So, and I remember as well, like I think I missed out I missed the semi-final of the World Champs in 2017 by 0.3. And there's this photo where like we're all running towards the finish line. And I think like 4 people in that photo have now been popped. And it's just, it's fucked. So yeah, like it was always relevant. It was always there. Like there was always someone, getting done once a year, twice a year, whatever it might be, people that you'd race against, people that you even, would know. But I think when I was younger, I think I credit like a lot of my, I'd say part of my success, but a lot of like the way that I carried myself in athletics was because I had Ryan Gregson as one of my mentors and people that I idolized, and I was fortunate enough that I got to train with him, and then ended up becoming rivals and and mates. So he told me once when we were really young, I reckon, when I would have been like 17 or 18, and he would have been 23 or something like that, and he said that he said something along the lines of, when you're on a track, everyone's clean. You just have to have that idea that everyone's clean. Because one, if you have the perception that someone's doping, or you're skeptical about it, is realistically, like, one, you're thinking about the wrong things, and two, they're probably you've already got a defeated mentality. So I think for me, yeah, it's you just try to block it out in the best way possible, and yeah, realistically, just control what you can control and just worry about yourself. But yeah, I kind of got off track there. But yeah, like, it was always something that was relevant.
Yeah. Hey, let's just dive into the Australian system for a little bit. You're a good guy to chat to it about, and it's just, you're obviously a bit older now, you're a bit much more mature, and you've moved on, and you're also out of that intense kind of.
The jury's not out on more mature, but yeah.
You're also not kind of living and breathing it as much, so you're not as emotionally involved. But you went the traditional road that our best guys, a lot of our best guys go, not all of them, but with Nick Badeau and his squad. You were coached by him for years. You did well. You did really well, and then you had a falling out. You're in Spain, I think. You had a falling out, and it kind of ended. And looking back on it now, reflecting on it, were those years with Nick formative? Do you have regrets? Like, what do you have? What do you think about that when you look back on it?
So I think probably better way to kind of lay a foundation of this is like probably describe my relationship with him and how it was formed was. So when I was about 16 or 17, I got introduced to him at like an APS, which is like our school, like private school, like sporting competition league, whatever you want to call it. And I met him through, I can't even remember who I met him through, but obviously knew who he was because, before Gregson, my biggest idol and like the person that I just looked up to was Craig Mottram. So obviously I knew who Nick Badeau was. I'd obviously heard some infamous stories, some not great stories, but realistically, he was an athlete that had the best distance and middle distance athletes in Australia, and he still does. So I got introduced to him, and at that time, he had given me, he pretty much kind of almost asked if he, in a way, to start managing me. So he started looking out for me with a couple of races here and there. He sent me over to New Zealand for a race, started to get me into some New Balance gear, which I ended up being with New Balance until the end of 2016. So yeah, that was kind of like my informal like introduction with him. At the time, I was being coached by my mum, and she took me kind of all the way through to juniors. And then at the World Juniors, didn't run as well, came back from World Juniors. I think I got knocked out in the semis there as well. Kind of ummed and ahed about college. Spoke to a couple of colleges, and I thought, like, it might be a great thing. And I now think that college is one of the best ways you can do it, because realistically, it's like you're getting paid $100K a year anyway, because you're getting a free degree, free rent, free food, everything. So I think that system is amazing, and anyone, without an outlier like Cam Myers, or maybe an outlier like what Gregson was, or Brett Robinson, whatever, like, who are gonna make teams early. I'd suggest that to anyone. So and then I remember in February of 2015, so it was my first year as a senior, I had a fucking shithouse race in Perth. I ran a mile in like 4:20, like I was fucking stinking up, like just got scrapped off the field, like I was terrible. I did that, and I remember I was in the airport coming home, and I thought, fuck this, like, I'm done with running. Like, I was ready to just give it up. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't like it. I don't like coming last. I fucking hate it. Anyway, so I remember for that flight home, and maybe that night, I think I got the red eye home. So for 12 hours in my mind, I was retired and done with the sport. Anyway, I remember next day, mum comes into my room, who was coaching me at the time, and she says, look, I don't think you should give up. I think you should go one of two ways. Either one, potentially think about going to college, or two, join a new coach. And I was like, yep, all right, fair enough. Sent out a few more emails to the people I was speaking to initially. Spoke to some people that were already over there, like Morgan McDonald, Jordan Makins, a handful of others. And then I spoke to, who did I speak to? I think I spoke to Nick, spoke to Rinaldi, and then spoke to I think I spoke to Rinaldi. That might not have been. But I remember speaking to a couple of coaches and thinking, all right, what should I do? And I remember I sat down with Nick, went for a coffee, and I just said, look, mate, like, one, this is where I'm at. I'm ready to find a new coach or think about going to college. And I remember we went for this coffee in like South Yarra at the canteen right along the Yarra River. And he said to me, he's like, what would you rather be doing? Coming fourth at a Penn Relays and you're the third runner and running a 4:02 mile split and you get your minute of fame on flow track, or do you want to try and make the Olympics in a year and a half's time? And I was like, what the fuck? Like, Olympics? Like, I just ran a 420 mile, 420 mile, and he's talking about maybe making this is February 2015, and thinking about maybe making Olympics in less than a year and a half. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ. All right. So anyway, I remember the next day I ended up joining him, and that's kind of the start of the relationship. And then obviously left in August or September of 2017. So it was about a good 2.5 years. But yeah, I think when I got there, it made me realize that the athlete I thought I was from a professional standpoint was nowhere near where it should be. Just little things like dieting and gym and consistency, just commitment to the sport, and just doing everything you can was just nowhere near where it should be, especially at trying to be an Olympic level. Obviously, I was fortunate enough under Nick that I got to be in a group where we had Gregson, Collis Birmingham, Brett Robinson. We had Stewie McSwain, who was not the athlete he was now, but he would train at such a high level. You had Sam McEntee. You had all these people that I just think that if you get thrown in a situation like that, there's no way that you can't get better, and there's no way that you can make changes that are gonna benefit you. So got thrown into a system like that and pretty much learnt the way. And I think back now, I'm like, I've definitely been asked that question, and about whether I regretted my time at MTC or with Nick or anything like that, and definitely not. Like, I learnt a lot. I learnt a lot about myself as an athlete. Learned how to make it to an Olympics, to a World Champs. I learned how to do. I learned to be an athlete. Yeah, and there was also part of me about there's things that I definitely didn't like about myself, as like my personality, and occasionally my personality, and occasionally the person I was when I was with Nick. So in terms of like good and bad things, learnt a lot. And I look at the Melbourne Track Club system now, and it's there's a reason why it's been the best group in the world, one of the best groups in the world, but definitely the best group in Australia since the 2000s, probably even late 90s. And obviously everyone has some, not everyone, but people have some poor opinions about him. I'm not saying that my opinion of him is great, but realistically, he attracts the best athletes in the world and makes people better, and he gets people on teams. So definitely don't regret my time at all. I think if I look back now, like, I think obviously we left. I left like I left first thing in the morning, didn't tell anyone, and booked a ticket from Madrid to London to join the Australian team before World Champs. And I look back now, and I just remembered like a lot of the things we were arguing about have probably stemmed from the Olympics. And there was also a lot of stuff which I had thoughts about. I didn't really get to voice my opinion. I felt that like there wasn't really a responsibility of Nick. Like, he didn't take any responsibility for my poor race. So there was a lot of things which I wasn't liking. And then obviously away from that, like, he's a pretty hard person to deal with. But I look back at the time when I left, and I think, fuck, like, it was such a fucking brave move. Like, I was 22, I was running so shit. It was, to make matters worse, I'm allergic to peanuts. I had a fucking an anaphylactic nut reaction in the middle of training camp. So I was on like prednisolone, which is like a really strong anti-inflammatory. So I was just at that time in Spain, like it was like literally just a terrible time for me. Running shit. My last race before World Champs, I think I ran a 153 800 in Cork, like just going so bad. Yeah, so it wasn't great. And I left. And I think the way that I left, like, yeah, I look back now, 22 years old, like fuck it, like that's a ballsy fucking move to leave your coach 10 days before World Champs, leave a fucking professional group, do whatever it is. And then weirdly enough, I fucking ended up running really well at World Champs. Won my heat in 3:37. I think in that I closed in like 152 or 151, which was quicker than the 800 I just ran. And then in the semi, ran really well, missed the final by 2 spots, by 0.3 seconds, closed in like 150 or something like that. So to do all that, like, yeah, I look back now and think, fuck, like that's a ballsy fucking move for a 22-year-old. But yeah, definitely don't regret my time there. Was fortunate enough that I got to learn how to be an athlete, like what it took to be an athlete. Got to make some, great lifelong friends in your Robinsons, your Gregsons, Stewies, Sam McEntees, all those people. So, I mean, obviously my opinion of Nick isn't great. I, don't really need to go into that too much. But yeah, I don't regret my time there at all. And, maybe there'll be a time one day where maybe we have a chat or something like that. But I am appreciative of my time there and what he what he taught me. But yeah, obviously just have no relationship with him, and I'm very happy for it to keep that way right now.
Yeah. And I like that, the ambition in many ways that Nick has to tell you as a kid, hey, do you want to stuff around, at the NCAAs
Yeah,
or
and
go to the Olympics?
I think as well, is like with athletics, like a lot of this is mentality, and it's not like he's going up to everyone and saying you're going to win an Olympic gold medal or you're going to do this, but like the belief that he gave me, and I'm sure he does for other athletes as well. Like when you do a session, and I was keeping up with fucking Gregson or I was keeping up with Collis or something like that. When you do that and you just got like a little nod, like the confidence that you had, like that 2016 season, when I ran my qualifier, won nationals, had a great domestic season. I was going into every race just thinking, maybe this once again it was ignorant. I was only 20, but like I remember going into this thinking I'm the fucking best here. Like there is no fucking way that anyone's going to beat me. Like it was just even that race when I raced Rhodesia. Like I remember just thinking that. Like I remember in that race, Nick said to me, "If Rhodesia's slowing down, go past him." And I'm thinking, how the fuck should why should a 20-year-old whose PB was 146 racing against the world record holder, Olympic gold medalist, what right does he have to go around him in a fucking 800-meter race? So yeah, I kind of got off track there, but yeah, the confidence that put into you, fucking amazing.
Yeah, totally, man. The best coaches have that. Hey, there's that ability to bring out that level of confidence in people and just make them believe in themselves. I remember Pat Clohessy, like, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, telling me a story about when he was coaching Simon Doyle, and Doyle was doing 8 400s with a lap jog, and Pat was telling him that he was doing every split in 57 because Doyle didn't have a watch on, but he was doing them in 59s or 60s, but Pat would just take 2 or 3 seconds off each rep, and tell him that he was doing them all in 57s. And Pat was like, yeah, I do that stuff all the time. It just gives them confidence, makes them think they're running quicker than they are. And I'm just like, it's little things, hey.
Yeah, and that's why, like, obviously at times, like, his coaching mentality and approach is great because there's times when you're running well, like, yeah, it's great. But obviously it's a very old school mentality where, if you're fucking running well, you get, you might get a little bit of praise, but when you're going down, it's like, you're just getting fucking, whatever it might be, but it's not great. But I think now with the new age of coaching and, I don't think that the old school mentality is a bad thing. Like there's definitely parts of it that are great. But yeah, I think now, like the way that coaching goes, and like you see it in the AFL, and that is that, you're almost more a mental coach than just a physical performance coach. Yeah. So, yeah, but like I said, obviously, yeah, there was times where it was great. There was times where it was shithouse. But yeah, I just remember that when I was running well and I was fit, like the confidence that group gave me and the confidence that Nick gave me, and not to say that other coaches haven't done that as well, like my mum and junior coaches and that, but when I was going well, I just felt fucking bulletproof.
Yeah. And how hard was like life after leaving Nick squad in terms of, getting into races, getting cash in the bank account from shoe companies, all that sort of stuff? Nick is obviously very good at opening doors, and he's been doing it for a long, long, long time. Did that sort of aspect of your life get harder?
Yeah, it's a good question, and this is actually probably something that like people don't fully understand. Is so for me, I had I'd left obviously before World Champs, had a decent World Championships, but at the time I was a 22-year-old who'd just missed out on the final of the World Champs. I'd ran 354, 335, and 145. So I had a decent resume under my belt. So for me, I was fortunate enough that I throughout the European circuit, through in Australia, through even contacts in America, I'd built up a good network of people, and I was in a fortunate position where I could have gone to a number of groups, could have gone to a number of coaches, could have been in a position where you know I had a lot on the plate, and I could pick where I wanted to go. Obviously the other part of that as well was the agency, and that was probably the one thing that I was probably worried about the most was the agency, because in my mind, like I always had the mentality that whatever coach I went to, I was always going to make it work. Like I was always going to be a good runner. That was just that was what I thought about. When I was at World Champs though, my priority was I need to fucking find a new agent. So I sat down with a handful of agents at World Champs, and yeah, and that was just on the back of me just creating friendships and relationships with the people. So I was in a fortunate position where the transition to another coach and another manager was, a lot easier than say other people. I think the tough thing is that realistically is that, well, sorry, first and foremost, Nick is an incredible agent. Like he, as a race agent, like in 2016, I raced in the Monaco Diamond League. I had no fucking right to be in that race. I raced in Oslo. I raced in Birmingham. I raced in big races all through Europe. And he has an amazing ability that he will, do everything for his athlete. Like I got to take my hat off to him there. Like if he's thinking about getting you into a race, you're 95% in that race. Like it's amazing. And yeah, obviously as well, he's got obviously had or has great contacts with all the shoe companies. So he's very good in that aspect. The tough thing is that there's no one really like that in Australia to that extent. In Australia. So obviously there's a few agents here like James Templeton, there's your Sean Whips that are coming up. There's a handful of people like that. But the thing is that there's no real option and opportunity for young people, like a young 20-year-old who's and ahhing about trying to be a professional athlete or going to college. That's why I say if you don't have those opportunities, go to college, because at least that way you're in the system, you're going to be relevant, you're doing something for 3 or 4 years, then you worry about it over there. So yeah, I think initially for me it was, not too bad. But I definitely know other people that have left Nick previously, and yeah, they've really struggled to get into some big races. But I was fortunate enough that I went to another agent who was, pretty powerful. Has a lot of great runners. And yeah, I was able to get into some good European races and American races in 2018 and 2019.
Right. Nice, man. Are you still mates with some of the guys that you spent, hundreds of hours running with during that time? Or does, years tick by and people fall apart, I guess. That's how it's gone? Or like are you
well, it's one of those things. Like I'd like to think, I mean, I'm still friends with all the people that I was running with. I mean, it's just one of those simple things where it's like the less you see people, the less of a relationship you're gonna have. Like it's not like I probably roomed and slept 1 meter away from Brett Robinson for bloody, hours, like ridiculous amount of time on training camps, on races, whatever it might have been. So when you go from that to, not seeing them, from being in different groups. So you just see them at like your Falls Creeks or your races or whatever, to then now where I'm not even doing that. Like, yeah, obviously a relationship is not going to be as good as what it once was. But yeah, if I say, for example, use Brett as an example, like where I'd still consider him a good mate. I'm usually one of the first people to say well done and best of luck. And I'll always be asking him stuff. So yeah, I'd like to think that I'm still friends with everyone. But at the same time, from when I was running, obviously had great friends in athletics, but I've also got a lot of mates and a lot of good friends away from the track who don't have any connection to athletics besides me. So yeah, it's just, don't have any, beef or anything like that with anyone. Just see people less. So the friendship is, not as close as what it once was.
And I remember some of your Strava training, right? And it was kind of nuts. Like you were posting pretty much every run to Strava, 100-mile weeks sort of thing, with sessions with like kind of big reps, like, like 2200s and, a bunch of 400 reps sometimes. And it was just big volume even for a 1500 guy, I think, you were borderline in that upper kind of range. And when you look back on that, I mean, that's the kind of athlete you were, right? You just needed that big volume and needed those thresholds and all that kind of threshold aerobic power work. Is that pretty accurate? Like you really kind of old school shit, like in many ways.
Yeah, well, I think that, I think if I look at the 800, is that realistically you've got to be able to, you've got to be able to either run a 45 400 or if you come from one end, or you got to be able to run let's just say a 335, which is what I ran. That's my opinion. You got to have either one of those. And yeah, obviously maybe I could have maxed out at 47 or 48 or something like that. Like that's probably as fast as I could have gone. So obviously my thing was that I had to work on the other side, and I've always had great speed, for a middle distance runner. I've always had pretty good closing speed. But yeah, obviously I had to come at it from the approach of, I had to work on my aerobic engine, and it's probably something from, when I was a teenager that was probably always lacking. And it probably showed in like national cross country results where, I was winning nationals when I was 10, and then I'd get into, my later years and I'd be finishing 10th, or I remember finishing 20th once or something like that. So there's always something that I lacked. So yeah, and obviously as well with Nick, like it's 3 sessions a week, track sessions, which is like a VO2 session, a threshold, and then some form of hills. So that's just the way that it goes. And I obviously did that with Nick, and going back to that point as well, like a lot of the programming and sessions that we would put together with Mum, a lot of that was helped. A lot of that was based on what Nick had taught us, and we'd make tweaks and stuff. But yeah, I was a high mileage 800 meter. I call myself an 815 guy, but a high mileage 800 meter runner, definitely. But yeah, there's definitely times where I probably did too much, and maybe I did too much mileage, or I trained too hard, or whatever it might have been. But yeah, it was just the way that it went. And yeah, I think maybe now, like if I had a similar body and I was, trying to run at a high level, maybe it'd be different. Maybe we'd be topping up with cross training, or I don't know, maybe we'd be taking an Ingebrigtsen approach or something like that. But for where I was at then, it seemed to work. But also at the same time, there's no denying that it has its toll, because at the Olympics I was fatigued, like I was fucked. World champs in 2017, like I was just cooked. World champs in 2019, I was cooked. So it's just, it's what I did. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it got me some good results. Didn't get me all the results I wanted, but yeah.
I remember we Runners Tribe interviewed you, like I don't know when it was. I can't remember. It was 5 years ago or whatever. And you had just won Aussie Nationals after a massive block of amazing training. And I remember you're going to have to tell me what year it was, but you crossed the line. You looked like you were kind of totally fine and could just do it again. You had an interview and you said that if the pace was quicker, you could have run quicker and you would have won it. Like what year was that?
I think that was the 2019 Nationals, where I won the 1500.
Yeah. So that was like obviously just off. I remember it was just off a massive block of where everything just went right for many months in a row. Hey.
Yeah, it was 2019 was an interesting one because I'd say that at that nationals, that was probably the fittest I ever was in my career. Like I was in ridiculous shape, and I even like if you look at pictures around then, like I was just so lean and so ripped. Like I was fit. Um, and yeah, it was. I think I probably didn't see that until maybe like March of that year, where I ran my first 800 of the season. And I think I ran 1:45.5 in Perth. Um, but that one was a tough one because the year before I broke my foot in, I think it was May 2018. And I was coming back from injury the whole of 2018. And I remember I had shin splints because my like glutes and hammies were so deconditioned that they were just, pushing on like the inside of my calf. I remember just thinking at parts in 2018 where I was cross training at the VIS. I was in a heat chamber. I remember just thinking this is fucking never going to end. And then when I did run, I'd have, niggles and like just stiffness, soreness, whatever it might be. But yeah, I remember went to Falls Creek in November of 2018, went to Falls Creek in January. And then I came back, and I remember just every race I did, I just slowly got better and better and better. And then I remember I ran a 1500 in like 3:40 is like my first race of 2019. I think it was like on Australia Day. And I ran like 3:40 or 3:41. I'd had a cold previously. I remember just thinking, fuck, like I've got a fucking long way to go. And I remember a couple of weeks later, Mum said to me, "You're doing the 800 in Perth, like that. You're doing it." I'm like, "What? Like, I don't know about that." Like, and I just remember at that point, like, I just flicked the switch and went from, even though I was training pretty hard to begin with, I just kind of like, I don't know, just took it to another level, and then, yeah, ended up running 1:45, and then won the nationals, and yeah, I was fucking fit. Like, I wish I had done a time trial. I wish that race was like a quick race because I reckon, yeah, I definitely would have. I think I definitely would have beaten my PB. But um, yeah, for me, I've probably always peaked, or I've probably always peaked like too early. In my years.
And you were saying before that, like in the Olympics, you were cooked, and world champs, you were cooked from, maybe overtraining, massive mileage, all this sort of stuff. That obviously you weren't cooked then, for that national. So there was when you got that training balance right, you were fresh and running well. Like, it's a matter that at those major events, did you overdo the training leading into them? Like, or was it at the end of the season and you just cooked because you've been racing for 4 months and you were cooked? Like.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and like that's just part of the difficulty with our sport is that realistically you know you're trying to just at times throw a dart at a dartboard, and you're trying to work out how you, because you got to, in a year you got to, you got to run a nationals, you got to run a qualifier, you've got to, do other races, and then you have to try peak again. So there's like all these parts where you're like, you're trying to, I'm not going to say peak multiple times, but you got to run at a high level a lot of times throughout the year. So
Yeah.
I think it's just one of those things where it's a balancing act, and obviously you don't get it right. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But yeah, I think like if I look at myself and Gregson of that year in 2016, like I ran both the 8 and the 15 at the Olympics, and he did the 15 at the Olympics. He came ninth. Personally, like I think that Gregson probably wasn't pleased with that result. But at the same time, I remember when that final, like when he was on the start line, I remember thinking this bloke might be able to get a medal. Like he could maybe sneak through for a bronze here. So it just goes to show that we were doing almost the exact training. He's got into the peak fitness, like the best you could be, and mine got me to 46th. So, so it's just one of those things where it's tough. But yeah, leading into that, it's just first year at a high level, qualifying for 2 events, winning nationals. I remember the day after nationals, we went to a training camp. Like I was in the mountains for like 5-6 weeks. Just I was just fucked.
Yeah. Man, like just talking quickly about the peaking twice thing. Like, I mean, people have been talking about that since I was a little, you can remember, but if you were the boss of AA, would you move nationals to when America has it? Like in July, August, September, July or August actually, or June. But Would you move it later, on the Northern Hemisphere system, instead of having to peak in bloody March and then train a little bit and then peak again?
I mean, no, I wouldn't. Because, if you're a good athlete, you should be in Europe from, June to September or something like that. Like, I think that that's the way that, or if you're an Australian based in America, like, I think that you should be either in America or Europe at those times. Like, that's just how it works. Like, there's a few people that don't do it, but that's just the way that if you want to be a finalist, a medalist in an Olympics, like, you should be in Europe. I think that, yeah, it's obviously tough to do that, but at the same time, if you look at the Americans and the Europeans, like, they have, European indoors, world indoors, like all these indoor championships that usually finish around March, April. So, yeah, I think that it can be done, and I think that Australians can do it. But yeah, it just you kind of almost have to approach, and this is the way that the MTC do it, is that you kind of have to approach that you should be able to win a nationals, not at your full peak fitness, in my mind, which I think has gone to show previously. Like, in that year, Ryan was in really good shape, won the nationals, and then he went to an even better level for the Olympics. So, yeah, it's a tough one, but I don't think it should be moved. I think that if it gets moved, the credibility of nationals goes completely out the window. In my mind, I think that nationals should be supported by every athlete. I think that unless you're a certain circumstance, like say if you're a bloody an Ollie Hoare or a Jessica Hull or something, or I think that maybe people like that should have an exception if for a particular reason. But I think that nationals, yeah, should be supported by everyone.
Nice, mate. Mate, just when I was watching the interview you did with Essendon, you mentioned it when you got knocked out of the Olympics, you kind of just spent weeks in bed. Like, I was listening to that thinking, shit, this guy sounded like he had, like, clinical depression. Like, were you depressed, or were you just, looking back on that, were you in a bad way, or was it just, were you okay?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I was very, very, like, disappointed, very sad, like, just felt like a fucking failure. For me, and well, I don't want to throw the word depression around, because I don't think I have it, and at the same time, I know a lot of people that have been impacted by depression, so I don't want to label that as depression, just for respect of the term and respect of others. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely the way that I was. It was probably definitely looked that way. I mean, just something that you'd worked for. I mean, this is such a throwaway line, but something that you realistically work for your whole life. You try to achieve a goal of making the Olympics. You dream of making a final, getting a medal, whatever it might be. Like, that's what you just kind of have in your mind. So yeah, coming back from that, it was just not great. I literally, I could barely run. Like, I was so fucked and so fatigued that I could barely break 5 minute Ks for a 30-minute run. Like, it was just terrible. And obviously I didn't make it better that when I came back, because I was so burnt out, I just was going out with my mates, getting on the piss, enjoying life. So that probably didn't make it better. But yeah, I mean, it was some pretty grim days in there. And I deferred from uni, so I didn't really have anything to, like, get me going and get me back into routine. So yeah, it was pretty tough. And then I remember one day Nick just said, "All right, it's time for you to get back to training. Let's get the ball rolling. You've got a world champs in 11 months." And I was like, "Fuck, all right."
Yeah. Oh, mate, it's been good chatting. The only other thing, I mean, I've kind of just gone off on tangents, but the only thing I was going to chat about was, how's your mum going, mate? She's obviously still got a squad. She's a gun coach. How's she going with it all?
Yeah, she's good. Yeah, got an amazing group. I think the thing away from that is that, like, and mind you, I only just base this on my conversations with mum and what I see on social media and that, but it looks like, yeah, like, everyone, the group she's created is a real family. Everyone gets on so well. Everyone's friends away from athletics. And, even like my mum's close friends are like, parents of coaches and that. And it's a full family affair as well. Like my dad's down there helping pacing, helping taking training. My sister goes down there. The only one that's really not there is me and my brother, but he's in London, so he gets a pass. But it's a full family affair, and she's got some amazing juniors. Like, she's every time I speak to her, it's like, this 10-year-old ran this time and like, broke a national record or whatever it might be. So got some amazing juniors. Obviously the one, like the big one, is that she coaches Morgan still. And yeah, it's hard to get a reading of Morgan around this time of the year because she's usually coming off like, a big training camp at Falls Creek, a big aerobic base. So I think it'll be, we'll get a bit more of an idea of where she's at probably once the first race happens. But yeah, it seems like everything's going well. And, I think with obviously she coached me to 2 national championships, Commonwealth Games bronze, a world champs team, and, a handful of decent times. What she was able to do. So like, yeah, I'm obviously thankful for that. And I think that what she was able to do with me was great, but what she was able to do with Morgan, who, ran the 400 meters at Com Games in 2018, ran 400 most of the season in 2018, to then come third at nationals in 2019 in April, and then to make the world champs team not long later and run 2 flat, not far off bloody sub 2 in, less than a year. I think that's fucking amazing. So, and like, that's obviously credit to both Morgan and Mum, but if I look at it from a coaching perspective, like pretty amazing feat to go from that to, a world champ semi. So yeah.
Awesome, mate. Hey, Luke, good luck with the career and everything. Enjoy your AFL, mate, and your footy, I mean. And then, yeah, it was lovely to chat, mate. Lovely to catch up and just yarn about it all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's one of those things where, like I said at the start, I'm never going to say I'm retired because I never know. But I mean, I definitely look like I'm retired, and people might listen to this and think, "Fuck, what a fucking idiot!" Like, you're done. But yeah, it's great, and I think.
What is your head-to-head? What is your head-to-head record versus Bold? Do you know?
So he beat me. I think he beat me 3 times in my career, or 4, maybe 3 or 4, and they were all in 2021. So leading into 2021, which is when I ran that season, like, I suppose, like, half injured. Actually, no, I'm not going to say I was half injured. When I ran that season, I was just not good. I went into that season with an undefeated record against Peter, and I think Joe as well. And then, yeah, that season, it was, yeah, they fucked me.
Yeah, that's what I think.
But yeah, well, I think
as much, hey.
Yeah, but yeah, just back to what I was saying. It's like, I just look at myself right now, and I think, for where I'm at, like, motivation to get to that level is just like, I watch the world champs, I watch the Olympics, I watch the Com Games every year, and I'd love to be there, but at the same time, like, I know how hard it is to get to those championships and to get to those races and to get to that fitness. So, just right now, and I may never get it, and that I just don't have the motivation, and I don't have the desire to train at that high level to get to that level. So if I was to be jealous of people making those teams whilst I'm not, it'd just be ignorant and completely disrespectful to the whole process. So the reason why I put a pause on my running, or a stop, or whatever you want to call it, is that, yeah, I just don't have the mindset to take it there right now. Maybe get it back, probably a very, very, very small chance, but yeah, it's just not there right now. So that's obviously the big reason why I'm not running. And realistically, I'm really enjoying my life at the moment, and I really love the standard approach of 9 to, I definitely don't work 9 to 5, more like 8 to 6 or something like that. But working 8 to 6, I get to work, finish work on a Friday, I get to enjoy the weekend, have a few Friday beers. Just, yeah, life's good. And I'm definitely one of the fortunate ones that definitely had a very easy transition to normal life than other people have had. So I'm fortunate in the position I'm in. I'm relatively content with the career I had, and definitely don't. There's definitely things that I would have done different in my career, but I definitely don't regret the decisions I made with coaching and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just a bit of a final byline.
Nice, mate. Thanks, Heath. It was great having you, mate. Good luck with everything, and good to see you back running one day. But if not, then all the best with it all.
Yeah, and thanks for that. And yeah, I mean, maybe this is either known or not, but I'm probably one of the biggest running stat nerds like ever. So I still don't miss a race. I always know what's happening in Europe or America and stuff like that. So I'm always watching from afar. I'm always shooting people a message when they run well. So yeah, I don't have blood, sweat and tears in it, but I'm still a massive fan of the sport. So
Nice. Awesome, man. All right. Cheers, Luke.
thanks, mate.